too. Like stuff I used to do, I can't do anymore.
Yeah.
Did you do Epcot?
Yeah, we did get fine. That was the first one we did.
Did you do the Surviving Mars ride?
If you don't sleep enough, you start seeing.
No, but we did see it because I went with my little brother. He's only 8, so but we saw it. Apparently, it's like.
See, I did that and I got.
Like I can't.
I didn't throw up, but I felt bad the rest of the day.
Yeah.
And I looked it up, and people died on that ride.
I've noticed that
Crazy.
if
So
you
we
don't
did
sleep enough, you
Epcot
don't
and
see.
SeaWorld. Oh.
If you do see, you're not
I know we saw
sleeping,
people
you don't
walking
see
out of
right
it.
through
They were like green. Like they
Yeah,
looked so
there's a
dead.
puke bag right there. Like,
That's so
I don't
bad.
know.
I was like, why am I doing
I don't
this?
sleep.
You just hang on for dear life the whole time.
Oh.
It's like,
Bridge.
imagine the high.
Bridge, you're marked for dismissal at 2 o'clock.
Okay.
Jacob didn't come to class anymore.
Because like you know how Grayson just doesn't sleep at all.
Alex.
I don't understand how he does that.
I know Naomi's
He
here.
just lives. I don't understand how he's like just going day by day with like 5 minutes of
Edith,
sleep.
Lucia.
But he is. He is. I see him awake at like 4 in the morning. He doesn't. He sleeps in like increments, you know. Like, that's not. Okay.
Because I know it's wrong.
Like, for example, right? If I'm a certain distance away from somebody, right, their face just looks like twisted and shit. Alright, I'm not having a good day. What happened? I don't know. No, it was 2, but you know, that was a lot for me. I know. I need a good, like, well-structured sleep schedule. I need like an optimal 8 hours of sleep. Wake up at 6.
All right, guys. Today we've got really 2 big things to check off our list. One is I've got a practice quiz for you. One thing to note is that our quiz is not on Monday. It's actually on Wednesday. We give you a little bit more time, partly because 3.4 is a little tougher for some people, partly because it's that important. But for about the first 30, 45 minutes, I need you to try the practice quiz and give me time to go over the practice quiz with you. So in just a few minutes, I'll set a 30-minute timer. I think 30 minutes should probably be enough for you to at least figure out which ones you feel good with and which ones you don't. And then since we have time, I'll go over the whole practice quiz, and then you can start to identify what it is that hasn't clicked yet. And then as I promised last class, I would give you more time on the 3.4 bookwork. I told you that you didn't need to worry about that for homework yet. So if you don't have that finished, you'll have a chunk of class time after this practice quiz to do that. So those are the 2 things we need to do today. You guys got any questions about the directions before I start your timer? Okay. So again, this is a practice quiz, so please try to do it without a calculator, without your notes. Try to do it without getting a hint. That's going to mislead you and make you think that you know something better than you really do. Try it, see how you do. I think, I will check, but I think I have the solutions on my website. Yeah, I do. Or at least tell you how to get the solutions on some of them. So if you finish much earlier than 30 minutes and you feel like you did it all right, you can go to the class website and check it a little bit quicker. But again, we've got class time, so I will go over the whole thing, but I want to give everyone time to actually try it. So go ahead and please, even though I hope it doesn't take you 30 minutes, go ahead and jump into that just to be sure. Alex Smith. Yeah.
Can I put this in the basket? It's from Monday. I wasn't here
can.
on Wednesday.
I'm not asking for it until next time, so
No, this is the one from Monday.
I know.
Oh, okay.
I haven't
Okay.
graded anybody's yet, so there's just not a hurry yet since we don't have the quiz for a couple more classes. I mean, I can take it from you, but it just, I may not get it back to you before the quiz, which I'd like you to have in case you need to study it. 10 more minutes and then I'll go over it. it has been 30 minutes. So even if you're not finished here, you should have figured out where you slowed down. So if you checked your answers on the class website and with your calculator, then I guess you may know which questions you cannot pay attention to. But if you didn't do that, you should probably pay attention to all of them just to be safe. So again, I'm going to go over all of these with you. Just because there's plenty of time, there's no reason not to. So just make sure you give me your attention here on the parts you need. Okay, starting off with question 1. This one asks us to use change of base. And now, I guess I can tell you next class, but I don't remember if the actual quiz has multiple choice like this or if it's just a short answer. But change of base can be written 2 ways. It can either be written with the common log, which is base 10, or it can be written with natural log, base E. And based on the choices given to you, you had to go with choice A. Change of base. Any questions about that one? Actually, what I'm going to do here is I'll just go ahead and go over all the questions, and then if there's any of them you want to ask something detailed about or more clarification on, then I can go back at the end. Okay, number 2. They're asking us to simplify this so we can figure out which one of these is equivalent to this. So first thing I would do is deal with this square root. So square root is the same thing as an exponent of a half. And then I think the last thing you need, I can kind of look at the choices. Even though it didn't say to expand this, looking at the choices I can see that that's what they tried to do. So if you have division inside of a logarithm, that would, oh actually I need to deal with this 1/2 before I do that. This 1/2 needs to come down out front. It needs to be out of the way. It's the whole reason I needed to change it to a 1/2. Okay, now I can expand. Division inside of a logarithm expands as subtraction. So log base b of 77 minus log base b of 81. Now this was 1/2 times all of this, so when you expand it, it's still 1/2 times all of this. And that has to be choice A again. All right, now they're telling us to condense in questions 3 and 4. So there's only 2 ways to condense. You should expect to be quizzed on both of them, both ways to condense and both ways to expand. So addition can condense into multiplication, choice D, and subtraction can condense into division. None of these answers look like that, but that's because 35 divided by 7 comes out to be 5. This division simplifies. So C for number 4. All right, number 5 is probably the one, especially on the front page. For the front page, it's the one I'm most worried about. And we did do a practice question like this on your notes, and so I tried to forewarn you about this. But division inside of a log, we could start off by expanding to subtraction. But then this also expands. Multiplication inside of a log would expand as addition. Go in this direction, you should bring all of those exponents down as coefficients. the opposite of what you should do if you're going the other way. But notice this is one of the choices, choice B. Choice B is not correct. This is what I tried to, this was one of the 2 questions I had you do as guided practice in the notes here. And it was similar to one just from a couple seconds ago. If this was minus all of this, when you expand it, it's still minus all of this, minus all of this. It doesn't just magically become minus the first part of this expansion and plus the second part of the expansion. So you actually have to distribute this minus, which switches this last sign, which is why it should be this is supposed to be a 3, this is a 3, this is a 3. There we go. So the answer was not B, it was C. Very common mistake there. Make sure that you, when you expand, if it's minus something that expands, it's still minus the whole thing after you expand it. Okay, on the back page there was one more question from section 3.3. So another condensing question. But before I can condense, I need this 4 to come up out of the way and the 2 to come up out of the way and the 4 to come up out of the way. Then I can simply say subtraction condenses to division. Those are both log base 10s, so they're going to be log base 10 when you condense them. The first part becomes the numerator, the second part becomes the denominator. Don't need to overcomplicate it more than that. Choice B. But again, don't just ignore that 2 and the 4 and hope that you put them in the right spot at the end. Pull them up as exponents and get them up out of the way. Okay, the other 6. Now, if this was just about section 3.3, we probably would have just done one day and then quizzed it. But since we bundle in 3.4 with it, and 3.4 is one of the most important things you guys do as far as where you're going in mathematics, if you continue to keep going up higher and higher. Solving exponential equations and logarithmic equations are going to become much more common. I know they're not common at all in Algebra 2, but that's because you just barely got introduced to them in Algebra 2. So before I even talk about any of these questions, I'm thinking about the format of the 3.4 notes. There was a few questions we could do in our head. There was a couple times we might have taken the log of both sides. There's a couple times we expanded or condensed. There was a ton of times, practically every question, we switched from exponential form to logarithmic form or logarithmic form to exponential form. And then some questions had undoing, add, subtract, multiply, or divide at the end of the question. Some of them had it at the beginning of the question, and some had them at both. So that's kind of my toolbox of things that I'm considering to do. There's one thing that didn't fit any of that, and that was ones that looked like this. So this is definitely not the first thing I think of, but at some point you've got to realize that if it looks like this and nothing else works, you need to factor to move forward. It does factor pretty nicely with guess and check, but if you need to do the product sum method still works on this. I know that takes a little bit longer, but it's a method that always works. Then you could set this equal to 0 and this equal to 0 and do the minus 8 with the plus 8. Okay, and for this first question like this, looks like switching the forms ends up becoming a thing. Exponential form to his logarithmic form. Exponential form to his logarithmic form. If you don't know how to switch the forms, that is going to be killer on these question types. I think I use this on all 6 of these, if I remember right from first period. Now, that being said, one of these is not really the answer. Which one of these 2 doesn't make sense? Okay, and how come?
Because something with an exponent can't ever equal -1.
Right. So you can't take the log of 0, doesn't make sense, and you can't take the log of a negative number. So this would be considered extraneous. Only one solution for number 7. And again, I didn't do anything wrong, just it created a solution that doesn't solve the original problem. It gave an answer that doesn't make sense. Okay, number 8 to me is a little easier to figure out how to start, because I know I could easily get rid of the plus 10 and I could easily get rid of the times 2, so why not? Second question in a row, exponential form, switch it to logarithmic form. I really want to know what x is, so undo times 2 with divide 2. Now, I'm not going to dwell on this for a ton of questions, but even if you guys got these right, this is something that you need to keep in mind. Our quiz will be no calculator, and I know I had you practice storing these in your calculator to check your answers, but a lot of these you can still check by hand. It sounds like it would be really bad, but this is supposed to equal 40. If I plug this in, I can see times 2 divided by 2 cancels. E to the log base e of 15 is 15. That's one of those properties that you're supposed to know. So you end up with 30 plus 10, also known as 40. So with about 30 seconds of effort, you can actually plug it into the original equation and make sure that it works, even without a calculator. So I'm not going to dwell on that every single question, but just keep that in mind. Okay, if I asked you what is difficult about number 9 or is different about number 9, I think most of you would say that it could be harder because it's got some fractions in it. Well, if fractions are the problem, then deal with the fractions first. Multiply this side by the denominator, so those cancel. Multiply this side by his denominator to keep the equation balanced. Maybe distribute the 5. And now it doesn't look any harder than the last question. We can do undo adding 5. We can undo multiplying by 5. You might want to switch these two, but third question in a row, you need to switch from exponential form to logarithmic form. And if you know what negative x equals, just multiply both sides by a -1, and then you know what positive x equals. Just to be clear, your answers can be 0, your answers can be negative. Just make sure you're not taking the log of 0 and the log of negative. Two very different things. But I would say if anything's different about this one, it might be this. If the fraction bothered you, just multiply both sides by the denominator, and then it's not in a fraction anymore. Okay, number 10. If I go through my list of stuff, there's only one way to start this question, and that is with condensing. This is log base 3, this is log base 3. They're separated by add or subtract. I can condense them into a single log base 3 with division, since this was subtraction. And for the fourth question in a row, switch the forms. Logarithmic form and his exponential form. This comes out to be 27. You could multiply both sides by x, so there's not a fraction. You could subtract an x from both sides, and you could divide both sides by 26. Of course, make sure that when you plug it in, you're not taking the log of something negative, because that would be extraneous. So, expanding and condensing should show up in at least one of your quiz questions when we get to that. Again, your quiz is not on Monday. Your quiz is not till Wednesday. Okay, 11 is similar to some of the others now. I feel like they have to start repeating themselves some. Might as well get rid of this times 9. For the fifth question in a row, you need to switch it from whatever form it's in to the other form, and then you just need to undo a times 3 with divide 3. Undo a times 9 at the beginning, undo a times 3 at the end, and switch the form like every other question.
Did you have to simplify the fraction? The 7/3?
Yeah, I mean, we should, just out of habit, but. But I wouldn't count that wrong. It's technically equivalent, so. And calculus is kind of weird. Like, in calculus, on our test, we do all multiple choice or free response like the AP exam does. So as a multiple choice, they would definitely reduce it, and so you would just need to recognize that you could reduce it. But as free responses, they actually don't make you do any arithmetic. So like if the answer was 8, you could actually just say 5 plus 3, and they let you quit there. And as long as it's equivalent, they don't care. So we do the same thing. So that's sometimes where I just not too worried about that. All right, and for the 6th time, I'm trying to emphasize how bad it's going to be if you don't know how to switch the forms and or don't consider switching the forms. You pretty much just don't even get started. Switch the forms, undo a plus 14 with the minus 14, and undo a times 4 with the divide 4. And that would be a pretty easy one to plug into the original problem to see that it works. Plugging in 25 halves in for x would give you log base 8 of 64, which would be 2, which is what the other side is equal to. Okay, so I know I just did a brief, here's what the steps would be, here's what the process would be, and I promised I would, if you had anything you wanted to ask about or clarify about, I would give you a chance. So, is there any of these you want to ask something specific or have me talk about it again? Any of these steps you didn't understand or I went over too quickly? Yeah.
Back up to 10 so I can write it down.
This 10?
Yeah.
Okay. That doesn't bother you that I keep moving it?
I can work around it.
Okay. I was trying to mess with you. But. Okay, others that you want to see again or ask about? Alright, so the good news is if you remember this pretty well from Algebra 2, I know you guys don't go super in depth on this in Algebra 2, but if you remembered some of it and you feel like you're getting a good hang of it, then that just means next week is going to be pretty easy for you. Monday we'll do a little bit more quiz practice, but there's not going to be anything new in it. And then Wednesday we will quiz these two and finish up test review. And next week will be a B week, so I will only see you the 2 times. So. Alright, the other class time that I have set aside for you is to work on and finish up the bookwork. Again, I know a couple people finished this up last time, but it really just depends on how focused you stayed. But I realized it was a little bit longer. So, you will need a calculator to check those even questions. You need to practice storing your answers in and checking them that way. But you're welcome to have the rest of class for that. And that's about 50 minutes. So even if you have a lot to do, 50 minutes should be enough to check that off. If it's not, you need to do that for homework so that you're caught up with everybody else. Under homework there, I'm asking that you turn in 3 of these recent assignments. 101 was the 3.3 bookwork. 103 is the 3.4 bookwork. And 104 was the practice quiz we just went over. If you would please make sure you have all that in Google Classroom before you guys leave, I would appreciate it. Alright, and as always, if you do find something I can help with, you just need to ask and let me know, please.